Ready? Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the order of the Planning and Economic Development meeting on July 16th at 6 p.m. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Can I have a first and a second for the approval?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you very much. Third item on the agenda is privilege of the floor. Do we have anybody here to speak on the privilege of the floor this evening? If you could please announce yourself when you're down there, I'd appreciate it.
Karen Lindstrom, I live in the town of Chautauqua, and I represent Chautauqua Energy Watch. We're talking this evening in the presentation that you're staying on the repowering of Dunkirk's energy power plant. The original repowering plan described by County Executive Wendell began with the continuation of the development of a dual-cycle natural gas generator with the potential of 900 megawatts of power being produced. That repowering was to happen in a short period of time. Where is that plan? We're not talking about that plan tonight, I don't believe. That plan would benefit Dunkirk very quickly. Any repowering could make the economic picture for Dunkirk improve, but the faster the better. Gas technology is tried and true. It is a known success. Micronuclear power entails a long process of development. Is there a natural gas repowering plan? The presentation today by Drs. Elsenbeck and Whitaker includes the explanation of why we would do this. And I'm going to quote that title, Energy Needs for AI Data Centers and Semiconductors. The question is, AI and data collecting, gathering centers. Do we need them? Do we want them? Are they good? Are they progressive? Estimates say that data gathering and AI will increase energy demand 6 to 10 times more than what we, the public, who have been conserving, changing our light bulbs, imposing heat limits in the winter, etc., now are expected to accept for the production of AI and data gathering. Why? Is this progress, or is it something else? Look at AI. There is a 10-year ban on AI regulation passed in the big bill. That means there's no oversight, no oversight. There is no regulation for 10 years. 40 state attorneys general have warned that oversight is needed. They say that without oversight, AI could be dangerous. Artificial intelligence amounts to a new technology order. Is it really innovation? AI could affect law enforcement, healthcare assessments, educational content, personal privacy, and of course, the role of elected officials. Do we really need elected officials if we have AI? AI would allow an erosion of due process in all areas. Why waste electricity on something we should not be accepting without more comprehensive analysis? More scrutiny is necessary. Reasonable steps are needed to satisfy the legal requirements and constitutional rights that we all expect, as warned by the state attorneys general in their letters to the federal government. And where is the gas repowering plan? The reason for repowering Dunkirk should be to eliminate the justification that is given to us, the public, for the destructive and wasteful wind, solar, and battery energy storage systems that are being imposed upon us, not for AI and data gathering, which will do no good to Chautauqua County. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Does anyone else have anything to say privilege of the floor? Hearing none, we'll get on to the agenda. Next item on the agenda is the first resolution, which is authorizing execution of Restore New York grant disbursement agreement with the White End. Who do we have speaking tonight on that?
Good evening, Nate Aldrich, Economic Development Coordinator.
Mark Geis, Deputy County Executive for Economic Development.
Thanks for being here.
So this resolution simply allows us to really accept and close out, accept and disperse a $1.25 million Restore New York grant that we applied for and received a few years back for the White Inn project. You know, for the better part of 6 years, we've been working to get the White Inn into a, you know, new hands, new ownership group. We've done that. Steve St. George has stepped up. We're thrilled at what he's done. If you haven't been there, I encourage you to go out there for dinner or an evening. It's truly an asset for the village. Project's complete. It's exceeded our expectations. This is the final step to close out all the grant funding we were able to compile for the project, and we'll be submitting the final GDA next week. So just allows us to go forward with that.
Thanks for the explanation. I've been there. I'm telling you right now, it's just outstanding. The place is just, if you haven't been there, I'm gonna encourage everyone to wanna go there and have dinner and just to see what they've been able to do, so. Thank you for the explanation. Do we have any comments or questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, Mr.
Go ahead, John.
Chair.
I'll wait. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. What was the total amount in grants? Do you have that, in, you know, in combination?
A little shy of $2 million in total.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
No, it is indeed a beautiful place, and Mr. St. George has done a wonderful job. Going forward, and so I congratulate everybody on the execution. Going forward, though, I'm always uncomfortable using public funds to help very wealthy people do things like that, great and wonderful as they may be. And so all I would say is, going forward, please, let's tread carefully on these things. You've got a great success here. Don't let it go to your heads.
We reviewed the project financials, and the project was not financially feasible without this and other incentives and grants, so it is what it is.
Picking up on Legislator Johnson. I've tried to figure out why the White Inn closed the doors in the first place. Part of the answer presumably is 11 years ago, when I last taught business law at Fredonia, there were 5,000 undergrads there. Now I understand there are about 3,000. That means on parents' weekends, there are fewer people coming to the campus, fewer parents from wherever that need a room. My hope, echoing Legislator Johnson, is that now that the White Inn has been restored, and I'm sure it's beautiful, I haven't been there yet, plan to, my hope is that the economy, the private sector, finds that it is a profitable business, given that almost $2 million, it's all state money, or was there any federal through Southern Tier West or anything like that?
CDBG money that flowed through the state.
Okay. But the recent, or what we're doing tonight, $1.25 million is pure New York money.
Yes.
The other observation I would make is that this legislature over the years has been quick to criticize New York State. Taxes are too high, regulations are too many. And one of the reasons, a small one, but one of the reasons taxes are so high, this hotel got a gift of $1.25 million. I believe the Lenhart project in Bemis has a $2 million state grant that's still sitting out there for it. Is that roughly right?
There's some pending state money, yes.
Yeah. And so $2 million here and $1.25 million there for us older people who remember who Everett Dirksen was. He used to say $1 billion here and $1 billion there. Pretty soon it adds up to real money.
Senator from Illinois.
Senator from Illinois, Everett Dirksen. The same thing is here. As a resident of Chautauqua County, am I happy that the state ponies up $1.25 million to reopen a hotel in Fredonia? Of course I am. But I just think, I hope that the criticism of the state is not so widespread to ignore that, like in our schools. Some of our schools, as I understand it, when they announce they're doing a new gym, a new pool, a new auditorium, 98% of the project is a gift from the state of New York. So let's just accept the fact that all this money comes from taxes, and we can't expect to have it both ways. Of course, I'm supporting this. The White Inn has to be very important to, hopefully, a stronger SUNY Fredonia campus in the years ahead, so that parents that come with their high school kid to visit, a good experience at the White Inn gives a good appearance to the whole village and the whole campus. And the last thing I'll say about that is I happen to know that Colgate University, which is a very highly rated national university, the only way they could keep their little downtown hotel open, the Colgate Inn, I think it's called, the university bought it and the university runs it. So that's even a worse example of government replacing the private sector. In this case, government helped the private sector pull this project off, and I'm glad they did. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else have anything to add? Now we'll vote on the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
All those opposed? Carried. Thank you, guys. Second or fourth item on the agenda is to authorize Chautauqua County Visitors Bureau as the local tourist promotion agency for matching funds program sponsored by the New York State Division of Tourism.
Andrew Nixon, Chautauqua County Visitors Bureau. I'd just like to hand out
Sure thing.
supplements. Got enough here.
Thanks, Andrew.
Oh, no,
No,
sit
I'm
down. No, no, I
kidding.
thought you were gonna stand. I'll sit down over there.
I'll stand. Mark said
Yes.
long. We're here before you this evening to ask you to, once again, approve a resolution allowing us to apply for New York State Tourism Matching Funds. On the supplement that I handed out, the side A, I guess, with the greater amount of detail, shows how we would expend the funds, which would be for the Chautauqua County Travel Guide, and then in conjunction with Cattaraugus and Allegheny County to attend a couple of travel shows in Pittsburgh and Western New York. And then on the reverse side, it just shows the formula that the state uses to calculate the grant. So although every county in the state can apply for $172,000, we won't get anywhere near that. We'll get $49,000, and $83 once you go through the formula. They just make you go through that process. So we need a resolution that allows us to ask for at least $172,500. And so we have $250,000 in there, just as a maximum for the grant purposes. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
I'll just note the funding does not go through the county, it's just required for the matching funds
For the matching.
application.
Okay.
And how many years in a row have you been doing this? How many years prior to that?
Well, I've been with the Visitors Bureau for 35 years, so.
Yeah.
But the matching funds program is 40 years old,
Okay.
same as I Love New York.
Oh, thanks, Mike Planation. Do we have anything to add, committee? Do you have any questions, concerns on the resolution?
Just thank you for showing the respect for the committee to come here in person. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you. All those in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
All those opposed? Then it's carried, and thank you very much, Andrew, appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, the last resolution on tonight's agenda is, it's to establish 2026 goals and objectives and performance measures for the Chautauqua County Department of Planning and Development. Mark?
Yeah, so this is something we've been talking about for many months. I certainly don't wanna, talk ad nauseum about it, but, you know, certainly there, in the charter, or the administrative code, I'm sorry, there's language about the committees adopting resolutions for goals and objectives, as well as specific performance measures for these goals and objectives. And we did a work plan 6 months ago, I want to say. We presented to the committee. We outlined our goals, our objectives, our strategies, and our benchmarks in that work plan. And so we've developed this resolution, which aligns perfectly with our mission and with our work plan. And we talked about this last month, about, you know, the types of the goals, objectives, performance measures for a number of different things. So what you see in front of you is basically what we talked about last month. And, you know, willing to have a conversation about it if you'd like.
Thank you very much for all the hard work. I do appreciate it. Do we have anything on committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
thinking through the last maybe 3 months of talking about the mandate that our committee come up annually, at least annually, with goals and objectives. I've thought through today probably what the biggest problem has been with getting something done. And my conclusion is there's a great deal of confusion over the role of county government itself in economic development and job creation. This confusion has been 20 years in the making. As I've told some before, in 2005, there were no employees of the Chautauqua County Industrial Development Agency. Now there are Chautauqua County IDA employees, there are county planning and development employees, and there are some on both payrolls. This alone makes for a confusing situation as to what the county government's role is in economic and job development and what the Chautauqua County IDA role is. Our county law, however, is not confused. The county code is clear and specific about the broad powers and duties of our County Department of Planning and Development. The code has been referenced tonight. I'll just hit the highlights. Section 601 of our county code, the code is adopted by the legislature. 601 of the code, originate powers and duties of the director of the Planning and Development Department. Originate programs and activities aimed at improving the community, economy, and quality of life in Chautauqua County by working with private interests and public agencies to develop and market the county as an ideal place to live, work, conduct business, and recreate. B, coordinate the overall physical development of the county by working with all other governmental entities to ensure economically, aesthetically, and environmentally sound growth. C, coordinate the efforts of government and not-for-profit agencies in promoting tourism in Chautauqua County. E, part of it, preparation of all county plans and coordinate the production and procurement of all planning reports by county agencies. On that one, you heard at last month's meeting that although the code says our planning and development department should be the preparation of all county plans, neither the $120 million jail PowerPoint presentation we had, nor the decision on how to have a CARTS hub in Jamestown involved our county planning department. F, assist businesses and industries wishing to locate, relocate, expand, purchase equipment, and or modernize in Chautauqua County and securing funding, incentives, governmental services, and other types of assistance necessary for such location, expansion, modernization, and startup. As you can hear, that's not a planning function, it's an active function. Assist businesses. G, coordinate the efforts of all appropriate entities in providing skilled, motivated, and trained personnel for the county's workforce needs. H, assist the county's small businesses in meeting their development needs. I, this one has been greatly confused the last year and a half I've been here. Acquire, this is the county government, not its industrial development agency. Acquire, construct, operate, and maintain roads, sewage collection and disposal facilities, water supply facilities and drainage facilities, solid waste collection and disposal facilities, electric and gas transmission and generating facilities, and railroad and other transportation facilities to serve community and economic development projects. J, provide for the acquisition, maintenance, clearance, improvement, demolition, change of topographical, subsoil, or other physical conditions, and other necessary site preparation work at sites as part of a community or economic development project. Again, this is talking about county government buying property, maintaining property, not its industrial development agency. K, coordinate all business retention, expansion, and attraction efforts throughout and on behalf of the county by working with local, county, and state stakeholders and to facilitate private investment, the retention and expansion of jobs, and improvement of the quality of life in Chautauqua County. There's only 3 more, but I would submit this is a hell of a lot more important than the mandatory training we did, where we had to learn about tag out, lockout, lockout, tag out. All the legislators are familiar with that, I think.
It was useful at the winery.
Yeah, no doubt. L, purchase, upgrade, and maintain parcels and sites that possess the infrastructure and amenities coveted by businesses for current and future development needs. In other words, the county legislature before this one, it could have used the $5 million of Joe Biden money and the $1 million plus of capital funds, county capital funds. It could have directly purchased property at the Ripley Interchange or Westfield or Fredonia or Silver Creek. It didn't have to give that money to the county IDA. M, work with utility providers to ensure the appropriate utility infrastructure needs are being met for community and economic development projects. And the last one I read to you, N, work with the appropriate entities to help foster business startups and growth. Well, what does our code say about the County of Chautauqua Industrial Development Agency? That's 602 of the code. First, it says that boilerplate that our IDA has the powers that all state IDAs have. What does it say locally? In addition to the powers defined in the New York State Act, its principal purpose shall be to borrow money and issue bonds to underwrite undertakings fostered by the Department of Planning and Development, the Industrial Development Agency, the county, or other advisory bodies assigned for such a purpose. 20 years ago, that was a very clear statement of law and practicality of function. The law has not changed. Prior county legislators, prior county executives the last 20 years, they have pulled back on the county's direct role in economic development, and we sit here tonight with this confusing picture where from time to time a lawyer from Buffalo for the IDA diplomatically tries to tell us to keep our hands off of certain things. But an understanding of the current law, the county code, you can hear that the horse pulling the cart is supposed to be the county government itself. The IDA was viewed as an economic development tool whose principal purpose shall be to borrow money and issue bonds. and hand out pilots and sales tax exemptions and mortgage tax exemptions. So, you have in front of you a draft 26 Economic Development Goals, Objectives, and Measurements that I redid based on input from a number of you over the past 3 months. And these goals and objectives have much simpler measurements. They have measurements. Many of the items on the from the Department of Planning and Development are more a listing of activities rather than measurables, and things that can be measured. So I offer, number one, that our committee state that job creation is our number one goal. The objective would be to have a net gain of jobs in 2026. Measurement would be the New York State Department of Labor. Secondly, a trained workforce is the goal. The objective is to expand job training opportunities in 26. Offer county financial support to JCC for expanded job training opportunities. Measurement would be how many people participated in workforce training programs in 25 compared to 26. Right now, as I understand it, no county government money, not $1, goes to cover training expenses at Jamestown, at our community college. The state doesn't either. And we know we may well lose the job training that Job Corps offers. So this goal, objective, would be suggesting to the county executive he put some money in the 26 budget for job training, specifically through our own community college. 3, create the conditions for additional new jobs is the goal. The objective is to acquire 200 acres of land in 26, suitable for industrial business parks. That could be the county itself. It could be 100 acres by the county, 100 acres by the IDA, or any combination. The measurement of that success would be how many acres of land were acquired in calendar 26. 4, making lands of the county and its county industrial development agency that we already own shovel-ready for industrial business park development is the goal. The objective would be to get 120 acres shovel-ready by 26, including Ripley and the South County Industrial Park. So as long as that happened, that would fulfill that goal. It should be an easy one to have a measurable that got done. We're told that is to be done by the fall of 26. Then I did some more research, and consistent with the code that I read to you earlier, by resolution of this legislature 69 of 1999, Chautauqua County, not the IDA, Chautauqua County purchased 37.8 acres of land adjacent to the county airport at Jamestown in the town of Ellicott for $26,900. At the time, that was $711 an acre, adjacent to the airport property. These lands are served, or could be, by Jamestown Water and Sewer. 2026 should see a plan presented to the legislature to make the appropriate land shovel-ready for industrial business development. 5th and last, expanding tourism beyond the Memorial Day, Labor Day season and ski season is a goal. Objectives include restoring passenger air service to the Chautauqua County Airport at Jamestown in 2025, attracting more conventions and group meetings in the off-season in 2026. Measurements include increased occupancy tax revenue from greater use of our lodging facilities. Those are all legitimate goals for our county government itself and its Planning and Economic Development Department. And every one of them has a measurable that is not a fudge factor. So whatever parts of the planning and development goals and benchmarks you wish to adopt, I would respectfully request that you agree to add 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 out of this proposed resolution. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments before we vote? Committee?
That's a fair question.
It's a resolution here, right?
Just the goals and objectives that was put out last month's meeting.
Yeah, right,
Whether we like them or not.
right, that's what we're gonna be voting on. So all those in favor of that resolution?
Point of order. I don't see anything in front of me that's styled as a resolution. I see from the, maybe I'm missing it, or Fred Johnson's missing it. I have on my desk from before, Chautauqua County Department of Planning and Development, 2026 goals and benchmarks. This is not in the form of a resolution.
That's what I thought we
It's
were
in the
voting.
pre-file.
It's in the
It's in the
pre-file.
pre-file.
It was sent via email.
Yeah.
Well, it just is a technical matter to a 73-year-old that hates the technology around here. I open these things up, and they tend to give me the agenda. It's more than once that the actual resolutions are not on my computer to open. And Fred Johnson's run into that once or twice as well, I believe. I need time, we need time to look at that resolution.
Well, we're ready to vote on this.
Where is it?
And we've carried this on long enough.
Planning on it, go ahead.
for our
Mr.
committee.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Right here. That one, right?
it's 6:32. We've spent 32 minutes on the public's business. And we're talking about goals for 2026, and
Yeah,
we've hashed it
respectfully,
over too much.
No,
It's
I'm
too
just
much
saying-
time?
No, I'm just
Time
saying
to go
this
home?
back-
Collect our mileage?
We have speakers too.
Well, you got it, you got an
Yeah,
hour
drove from-
presentation.
But
Drove
it
from
was
Buffalo.
included in our emails though, so we should have reviewed it.
Exactly,
prior
should have been
to-
reviewed by this
It was
committee.
pre-file. It's in
So
No,
it's-
it's
I
right
don't
there.
doubt it.
There it is right there.
So I'm gonna go ahead with the vote if that's, is that acceptable? Can I go ahead with the vote? Chair of the ledge, is that something I can do? Absolutely, let's do that.
I'm moved to amend this resolution to add the 5 points that are in writing in front of you.
Fred has presented an amendment on the resolution. Do we have anyone to second the amendment presented? Hearing none, the amendment is defeated. We will vote on the original resolution. All those in favor of the original resolution?
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No.
Motion is carried. Resolution is carried. Thank you. Thank you for all your work you guys do. You guys do an amazing job, and I will let you know, just keep doing what you're doing. I do, we appreciate it as a county, what you do and how you do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are.
Thank you.
But they're just,
I'll introduce,
We're gonna have meetings.
Next item on the agenda is other. It's going to be a presentation on all things nuclear.
So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time introducing, Dr. Whitaker and Dr. Elsenbeck. You know, they both have CVs that are, dozens of pages long, let's just put it that way, but, just real quick, Dennis is, an expert in the energy field. He does a lot of lecturing across the, USA. He works for Phillips Lytle. And he is on the CLCPA board. He has over 30 years of working in the energy sector. He's been here before and spoke to us. And he's also an active member of the group that has been working on the NRG project, trying to get that repowered, okay? I could say a lot more, but I'm not going to. Dr. Whitaker, he is a professor at UB. This is so dense, his CV, that he speaks all over the place. He's on dozens of societies. He's been published over and over again. He does consulting work, but he is an expert in nuclear, and he was just gave the same lecture, if you will, I don't know, presentation in Buffalo last week, I believe, and then he did it at Dunkirk last night. So I'm gonna leave it at that and let these guys do their thing so I don't waste any more time.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you for coming too, by the way.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
So, we have a, I don't think I need a mic, do I?
No.
No, we're just
Great.
right
We
here.
can hear you.
My students rarely say I need a mic. So, we have two parts to this. Again, we put this presentation together for three slightly different audiences. So, part of this will be on song. Part of it you might say, well, why on earth is he talking about this to this audience? So, you'll just have to humour me. But the goal here is to introduce you to what might be possible in the state of New York in terms of nuclear energy. So I think folks are familiar with the governor's announcement of within the last month that she's open to constructing 1+ gigawatts of nuclear energy, building on assets that we have in the state, nuclear assets that we have in the state right now. And there is no predetermined where does it go, what size shall the reactor be, what technology is to be used. So the goal tonight is to just say, this is what's possible, these are the issues the county and the city have to think through, and we're happy to answer questions going forward. So the goal here is set the stage. We are not going to talk about repowering the Dunkirk site. I have one slide that touches on how big is the site, what might be possible, but we are agnostic to reactor technology, and we recognise that the decisions that must be made will be made by the City of Dunkirk and the council. So we're here to inform, nothing more. So with that, can we go to the next slide, please? Perfect. So we're going to start off with some myth busting. And I'll explain this in a moment. We'll talk about sources of electricity in the United States and then in our state of New York. I'll differentiate between base load, intermediate load and peak load in terms of how do we develop an energy profile, an energy generation and transmission profile that can deliver the power that we need now and the power that we might need going forward. I'll talk about the US nuclear energy landscape as it exists today. I'll touch on some challenges, opportunities, and importantly, issues related to safety. And then we'll pivot and talk about advanced reactors, so not my grandfather's, my long late grandfather's nuclear reactors, but what's coming online now. And then why build nuclear? Why should, say, the City of Dunkirk be considering deploying nuclear technologies, nuclear energy? And then perhaps the most important part of this presentation will be made by my colleague Dennis. He'll talk about aspects of economic development, the economics of essentially repowering coal plants, issues related to climate change, and issues related to transmission and distribution. It's one thing to generate electricity. If you can't get it to the off-takers, it's by and large useless. So you need to think about energy as an ecosystem. And you need all parts of the ecosystem to be working together to have an efficient ecosystem. So figure top right, and I apologise, the back row, perhaps your eyes are a whole lot better than mine, but let me walk over here. And this is a photograph of Plant Vogel. This is the plant that was brought online in the last couple of years. In this image there are 2 gigawatt scale reactors. And can anyone tell me where those reactors are? I'm a professor, I'll pick people out in the audience to say, don't you worry. And there's no pop quiz at the end.
The two white smaller ones with the black rings around them.
You got it in one, you get an A+.
It's the best grade I've
And
ever
what are these
received.
things? What are these?
Cooling towers.
Cooling towers. We affectionately call these, and my MIT nuclear engineering colleagues, we call those nuclear volcanoes. Why? Because when people in the press talk about nuclear energy, what do they show pictures of? Cooling towers. And what comes out of the top of these cooling towers? Mist. Water mist. It's just part of the energy generation cycle. So these nuclear volcanoes are often tagged as the nuclear reactors. They're not. These reactors, they're puny by comparison with these cooling towers. So really important to set the stage. But when you talk about a nuclear power plant, like a coal plant, like a gas plant, you need the heat source, which are the reactors in this case, and you need turbines, you need generators, and yes, you need cooling towers. So it's a package. The reactors actually make up, in terms of the footprint, a very small part of the site. Right, with that, we'll go do some myth busting. And I'm going to pivot to a chap that the older folks know called Homer Simpson. Homer used to drive me bonkers for a whole host of reasons. But as I became involved in the nuclear energy enterprise through the prism of a civil engineer, it particularly irked me that people would come up to me and ask questions about nuclear energy that were so far wide of the mark that barely didn't deserve an answer. And I attribute most of the nonsense to this chap, Homer. So, with some colleagues at the American Nuclear Society, put together some myth busting, or Homer busting, or setting Homer straight. The woman who will make the presentation is a PhD student in nuclear engineering at the University of Florida. So, we're going to run some technology here, and I'm very grateful in advance for Olivia making it work. So, you've got 5 minutes of humour up front of hopefully not 55 minutes of boredom.
Hi everyone, my name is Kaylee Cunningham. I'm a PhD student at the University of Florida studying nuclear materials research, and I'm also commonly known as Miss Nuclear Energy on TikTok. Now today, we're gonna go through and debunk The Simpsons. Because unfortunately, some people actually get their science and facts from Homer Simpson.
Nuclear. It's pronounced nuclear.
No, it's not.
Nuclear.
And we are starting off strong here with the pronunciation of the word nuclear.
That should speed things up. I spent $1,000? Oh well, I'll just tell them that my kid did that. Uh-oh.
So today we're just embracing the actually vibes because this does not happen in real life, you guys. It just doesn't. Anytime anything goes wrong in a nuclear reactor, we have these long skinny rods, they're called control rods, that drop into the reactor. And they're made of this material that absorbs neutrons and basically just like slows everything down. So this physically cannot happen. Debunked. On to the next clip.
Oh, this is the worst day ever.
Nuclear waste is not green glowing slime. It's just not. It's actually kind of disappointing. It doesn't even glow green. They're little tiny black ceramic fuel pellets that get stacked up inside these long skinny metal rods. That's it. They get bundled together and they go inside the reactor, they do the fission, and then they come out of the reactor and cool down and go into storage casks. That's it. Debunked.
I think it's full, sir. That's ridiculous. The last tree held 9 drums.
Agent Malone, Environmental Protection Agency. Some Boy Scouts stumbled on your little game of hide the ooze.
Oh boy, where do I start? Okay, first off, nuclear waste, aka used nuclear fuel, aka long skinny metal rods full of little ceramic pellets, would not fit inside the tree trunks. Like these things are really, really tall and wouldn't fit in these tiny little spaces. Next, use nuclear fuel. Once it's all used up and we've decided we're done with it for now, it can be reused, but we won't get into that. What we do first is take the fuel out of the nuclear reactor and put it into a pool to just kind of chill out and cool down. It sits in the pool until all of the neutrons calm down and the fissioning calms down and the temperature cools off. And then we take it out of the pool and put it into what we call dry cask storage. And these dry casks are basically just giant concrete cylinders that are incredibly, incredibly safe to the point where they can withstand a plane crash, a bomb, any sort of awful threat. And we take the fuel and put it inside these dry casks on the nuclear power plant site. And because we have so little nuclear waste, we really aren't in a pinch to try and move it somewhere. It's not like we're running out of space.
Now we just get Shelbyville Talk Radio.
Which, fun fact, if all of the electricity that you consumed throughout your entire life was generated by nuclear power, all the waste produced from all that electricity that you consumed would fit inside a soda can.
Soda, eh?
But I digress. Our industry does not currently have a more permanent waste storage solution, but the US Department of Energy is actually making a lot of progress towards building that permanent storage solution, what we call a deep geological repository. Now, all that means is that we're gonna bury this nuclear waste inside these dry casks super, super deep underground, and we're gonna put it basically back where it came from, back into the earth. So I hate to be the one to have to break this to you, but no, we are not putting green glowing goo inside trees to turn their limbs into octopus legs and give squirrels laser powered eyes. If you take anything away from this video, number one, let it be that nuclear energy is probably not what the media is explaining it to be. Number two, do not rely on The Simpsons for scientific information. We love Homer Simpson, but the man is not the brightest bulb. And number three, if you are looking for more actually reliable information, instead of turning on The Simpsons, I recommend checking out the American Nuclear Society's website, ans.org. Thanks, everyone.
Tesla stock is crashing. The headlines say Elon's empire is collapsing. But what?
That had nothing to do with Homer.
No?
Anyway, so I find that amusing in the sense that it kind of sets the stage. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So with that, you want me to pivot? Okay, if you're willing to run slides. All right, great, thank you. So let's then pivot to the second topic that I wanted to discuss tonight, and that's sources of clean electricity in the United States. The United States will pivot over time to clean electricity. What that timeline is, that's a matter for discussion. But if I look at electricity generation in the United States, and this is data from 2022, we generated in 2022 about 20% of our electricity from coal, about 39, or call it 40% from natural gas, a little less than 20% from nuclear, 10% from wind, 6% from hydro, about 5% from solar, and 3% from other sources, including, say, geothermal. So that's one important nugget. The second nugget I'd like you to think about is a comparison of life cycle emissions. And this is cradle-to-grave emissions, how many tonnes of carbon dioxide or CO2 equivalent are generated per gigawatt hour. And this is part of the climate discussion. Putting politics aside, it's an important discussion to have. So, of all of these sources of power generation, the most traditional source, coal, is the baddest actor. That's not surprising. As we move through gas, it's cleaner by about a factor of 2. Solar PV, we'll come back to that in a minute, that's cleaner again. There's geothermal, hydro, and nuclear, thankfully, is really near the bottom of the list. So it's a very clean form of electricity generation. So this is where we are in the United States now. This is essentially the carbon footprint of those different generation sources. Next, please. So yesterday, when I was updating the slide deck for the City of Dunkirk with the input from Dennis, I said, I'm going to take a snapshot. Where is the state of New York now with electricity generation? Because we can't think about the future if we don't know where we are right now. So this is from the ISO website, 9:25 a.m. On the 14th. So this looks at the real-time fuel mix, and as at 9:25 a.m. on the 14th, we had natural gas generating about 27% of the state's electricity, nuclear at about 16%, dual fuel, which is natural gas and companion generation facilities, that represents about 40%, hydro is about 15%, we had wind at less than 1%, and other renewables, including solar, at about 2%. We pivot to the image on the right. This is just the renewables, of all of the renewables being generating electricity at the time, which was about 3,500 megawatts or 3.5 gigawatts. Hydro represented 82% of the energy generation, wind about 5%, and the other renewables about 13%. So renewables still makes up, in terms of solar and wind, a very small fraction of our energy mix. So that's an important point to keep in mind. Dennis will come back to it a little later when he looks at what's the plan and what can we do to get there. Next, please. So when we talk about developing an energy ecosystem for the county, the city of Dunkirk, for the state of New York, we need to recognise that there are requirements for what we call base load. That's industry, by and large. We need to generate some power 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the base load is by and large the same summer and winter. So this is data taken from one state, and it's, in this case, on the West Coast, and it looks at demand over a 24-hour period, summer and winter, the red and the blue. But you see that the demand, the base load demand, is about the same in the summer and the winter. And then you have what we call intermediate load, which is load that's required for most of the day. And then we have peak demand, which is required for a fraction of the day. So as those tasked with developing this energy ecosystem, they have to think through these issues. Where do we need the power? When do we need the power? Does it have to be base load? Can it be what I'll call intermediate load and peak? And what you need for base load will be by and large different from what's needed for intermediate and what's needed for peak power. So you have to flange up the type of energy generation with the required capacity and when do you need it. So it's no good relying on, for example, solar in the middle of the night. It's just not an efficient form of electricity generation in the middle of the night. Likewise, if the wind doesn't blow, you're going to generate very little wind energy. So we have to start to think through these issues on a holistic basis. Transmission required for the more traditional sources of power is very different from the transmission required for the newer types of energy that we're talking about today. So this energy by the hour has to be part of the discussion. Next, please. So where are we right now in the United States with nuclear energy? Just to set the stage. So we have in the United States right now 94 operating reactors. They are either pressurized water reactors or boiling water reactors. Those 94 reactors are at 53 sites or 53 plants in 28 states. There is a restart of the facility at Palisades in Michigan, and that's likely to come online 2026, 2027. And then the restart of Unit 1 at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania, that'll be essentially reactor number 96 into the operating fleet, and that's likely to come online in the 2027, 2028 timeframe. Again, both large light water reactors. So the point here is this country has a lot of experience at running a nuclear fleet, and that's something that we can build on. Next, please. So what is a large light water reactor? I mentioned a short while ago that there are two types of large light water reactors in the US operating fleet. One is a pressurized water reactor. they really dominate, and then there are boiling water reactors, and both are used to generate electricity. Shown here is a cutaway view of a pressurized water reactor, and the reactors that were built at Plant Vogel and brought online in the last 4 or 5 years, these are pressurized water reactors. So for a PWR, you have the traditional containment structure, traditionally reinforced concrete or steel plate composite construction, and that contains the reactor vessel that's shown here in yellow and red. Inside the reactor vessel, as the student from the University of Florida pointed out, we have control reactors, fuel assemblies, nuclear fuel assemblies, together with control rods, and the control rods are these skinny rod-like elements that project through the head of the reactor vessel. But by and large, the role of this reactor vessel is to generate heat. And we then turn that heat into steam through a steam generator that's shown here. That steam then turns a turbine. That turbine then generates, via the generator, electricity, and we push that out into the grid. So the only thing particularly unique to a nuclear power plant is how you generate the heat. And for a coal plant, there was a coal boiler used. For a natural gas plant, well, we burn natural gas. In this case, we fission neutrons and generate heat through the fission process. But the size of this containment structure is this, relatively small. Much, much larger is the balance of plant. So one can't just talk about a big reactor vessel. The reactor vessel is important because without the steam supply system, you have no electricity. But it's just part of that ecosystem that we call a power plant. Next, please. So, what are the challenges for nuclear energy in the United States? And I've got a comment up here, cost equals jobs. Now, I think this is a really important part of the discussion that no one talks about. And it's one of the most important nuggets, in my opinion. So, if we want to build something tomorrow, and we're just not going to build something tomorrow, but what's available right now, we have these gigawatt scale reactors, like Plant Vogel. How much do they cost? Well, if you're going to build 2 units somewhere in the state of New York, then setting aside the financing costs, the dollar amount's about $13 billion a unit. That's a lot of money. You're going to say, gee whiz, that's an incredible cost. And it's not an insignificant amount of money. But the point to note here is, if I build 2, I'm going to spend more than the average, $13 billion on unit number 1. As I pivot to unit number 2, the cost is going to come down substantially, and we have clear evidence from the building at Plant Vogel that there's learning from doing. And there's great value in not just building 1 unit, but building multiple units. So you might say, gee whiz, this is a great, significant amount of money, and it is. I'll just point out that the cost of building energy generation in the United States has gone up about 40% since COVID, across all technologies. So, overnight construction cost, which sets aside financing, and assuming $13 billion per unit. I'll point out that my chosen profession of civil engineering, unfortunately, we're responsible for 50 to 60% of the total cost. So if I spend $13 billion on a nuclear power plant, I'm going to spend of the order of $7 billion on construction. What's the value of the Bills Stadium? $2 million. Okay. One of these units is 3.5 Bills Stadiums. That's the level of effort required. The important point to keep in mind is that if I spend $7 billion constructing a nuclear power plant, I'm going to pick on Dunkirk as an example. That's $7 billion spent in Dunkirk on construction work. What a shot in the arm that would be for any city in the state of New York. That's an incredible amount of money. So, yes, it's a lot of money, but yes, it's investment in humans. It's human capital. We don't talk about that, and I'm not sure why. So, to build this would be thousands of jobs for Western New Yorkers, from what I'll call skilled tradies. So these are the plumbers and the steel workers and the like that actually get stuff built, all the way through to specialty PhD engineers and scientists that ultimately would run the facility. So this is jobs that span the economic spectrum, that spans the education spectrum. So we look at nuclear energy as requiring, it's a village. We need a village of people to build it and operate it. And also, that's not part of the discussion. So we spend more than 50% of the total price local. That's something we can't forget about. What do we spend abroad? At this point in time, we don't build reactor vessels in the United States. We don't build steam generators. Why? Because we've only built 2 plants in quite a long time. That technology exists abroad in South Korea and Japan, and one of these days we might onshore it, but that's not an overnight activity. So the dollars are important. The jobs, my opinion, just as important. And then learning from doing and supply chains. What do we learn from the overruns of Plan Vogel? Well, we learned that we perhaps forgotten how to do big civil engineering projects. And we also understood that we didn't have the supply chains in place to get this built. Why was Vogel 4 much cheaper than Vogel 3? Because we'd stood up the supply chains. So that's a lesson learned here in the United States, and a lesson learned by our Canadian cousins to the north with the refurbishment of Darlinghurst. So they have refurbished 4 units of their CANDO technology. Unit number 1, the refurbishment came in over budget, over time. The workforce on Unit 1 pivoted to Unit 2, time came down, cost came down. Unit 3, Unit 4. Unit 4 came in well under budget and well under time. So there's learning from doing. And that's a really important lesson that we've learned. Next, please. So what are some of the challenges? Most of them are not technical. Now, in that very nice presentation to debunk Homer, the student pointed out a couple of different things. So in this image top right, we have a fuel assembly, which I'll introduce in a minute, being placed into the core of the reactor. This happens during an outage. There's no exposure to radiation here. When the fuel has been sufficiently burned, it is taken out of the reactor and placed into a spent fuel pool. These assemblies are still hot. They're still pushing out neutrons, and we use water to moderate or slow down neutrons. And in this large, basically swimming pool, you slow the neutrons, you stop the neutrons, and you reduce the temperature of the fuel assembly. And after a period of a couple of years, these are taken out in the spent fuel pool and they're put into these dry storage casks. So I've heard in the past, folks say, well, what happens if someone steals a dry storage cask? Well, good luck stealing something that size that weighs about 75 tonnes and inside a secured facility on the side of a nuclear power plant. So it's just not going to happen. And then the question is, how do we then store that long term? This is a political football. It's been kicked around for about 50 years. There are technical solutions to the challenge. They just haven't been embraced. The long-standing approach has been to take these casks and basically bury them at Yucca Mountain in Nevada. There are alternate approaches that are being developed, including these deep geologic repositories. We're using hydrofracking technologies developed by Schlumberger and others. There are holes drilled deep into the earth and where material has not moved in 100 million or more years, and these become a permanent, well, semi-permanent home for the fuel bundles. So here we go from near cradle to grave. We have engineering solutions along the line. So what are the technical challenges? I think continuing to drive down cost, and that's something we've worked on at the University of Buffalo. So how do we reduce capital cost by standardising, turning plants, nuclear power plants or nuclear power plant projects into products? and using some seismic protective technologies that we have developed at the University of Buffalo over about 30 years that are now used to protect mission critical infrastructure worldwide. So what separates the traditional reactors or the legacy technologies with the more modern reactors, or what some are calling advanced reactors? Well, we have traditionally relied on water as a coolant in our reactor technologies. But we're now looking at coolants that aren't water. They're liquid salts, liquid metals, and high temperature gases such as helium. One of the challenges with a pivot to these newer technologies, especially those that run at very high temperatures, is developing and characterizing metals that can function at temperatures up to 900 degrees Celsius. So this is an engineering challenge that I think we have dealt with very well, and we're still looking to develop newer metals that might be cheaper and a little more efficient. But that's one of the engineering challenges. The disposal of high-level or spent nuclear fuel I've touched on, and then we have the non-technical challenges, the public perception of risk. People conflate nuclear weapons and nuclear energy, and it's like cheese and chalk, and I'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. And there's also concerns that people have regarding the safety of fissile material, and I just point to these dry casks that store spent nuclear fuel for a long period of time. So, next please. So, I think it's really important to talk about issues related to nuclear safety up front, and so everyone has a common understanding of the challenges and solutions. So most people in the audience, or some 50% of the people in the audience, will remember the Chernobyl accident. Anyone tell me what happened at Chernobyl? Or what was Chernobyl?
It was like a meltdown, didn't it melt down when the reactors melt?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to back up one step. Chernobyl was a Soviet-era facility to generate weapons-grade plutonium. And yet we generate weapons-grade plutonium in this country, so nothing unique about it. But it was a weapons production plant, primary function. The Chernobyl site, you can't really see it here, and the Chernobyl reactors did not include the containment vessels that have been part and parcel of every Western reactor since the 1950s. It was a cost-cutting issue. So Chernobyl was operator error, bad operator error. And using a technology that was developed, I think those reactors were designed either in the late 50s or early 1960s. Cost-cutting measures were taken, and we see the outcome. So, the important point to keep in mind, 3 Mile Island. Now, we're getting a little closer to 2025. What happened there? Again, operator error. How many people died? Big zero. I'm not saying it was a good thing, but when we talk about nuclear safety, we focus on loss of life. So TMI scores 0, thankfully. What TMI spawned was a domain of engineering called human factors engineering that's now used in many, many other aspects of life. So pick on airline pilots. Human factors engineering goes into the training of the pilots, the time they're required to sleep between flights or work days and so on. It goes into dealing with training astronauts, training many people who have to operate in complex environments. So that was an outcome of TMI. That's one of the good outcomes of TMI. Fukushima Daiichi, what happened there?
Built it in the wrong place.
Yes and yes. You need to build a pressurized water reactor near water. It uses water basically to dump energy that's not turned into electricity. So pressurized water reactors and boiling water reactors, they have been built near large bodies of water. The next generation technologies, which use liquid metals, molten salts, and high temperature gases, don't require water. They just don't. So you can put them elsewhere. And that's one of the advantages of the newer technologies. But here we had the catastrophic failure of 3 reactors near simultaneously. How many people died? Due to radiation poisoning? 0. 22,000 people died in the tsunami. But the nuclear contribution to that was 0. Now, it's going to cost $40 billion to clean up this mess, and so I'm not trivialising that at all. Now, what happened here was that as a result of certain processes within the reactors, that the space at the bottom of the reactor vessel, called a torus, generated hydrogen, and that hydrogen was vented into the steel framed structure on the top of the reactor. And a spark ignited the hydrogen that led to the explosions. In companion US reactors, there were retrofit measures put in place by the reactor designer and the US NRC, our regulator, back in the late 1970s. It says, thou shalt not vent hydrogen into the containment, you vent it into the atmosphere. So our regulator required the utilities to upgrade the plants. Now, I'm not sure how I'm back to you. Here we go. So the point is, there are lessons to be learned from Fukushima. Would it have happened in the United States? No. So it's important to learn from these accidents. It's important to put them in perspective. Next, please. So what are some of the options with advanced reactors as we think about repowering coal plants around the country? This is not unique to Western New York. There are many, many discussions underway on repowering coal plants with advanced nuclear. I've been part of these discussions since about 2018. But one of the advantages of the advanced reactor, or the smorgasbord of advanced reactors that are coming online, is that it puts the customer in the driver's seat. So you can choose a microreactor, and I'll show you a photograph of one of those in a few minutes, through to small modular reactors, through to large reactors. But if you need 600 megawatts, for example, you're not obliged to buy a gigawatt. And it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to build 600 microreactors to generate to 600 megawatts. But the point is, you pick. You figure out what your power profile is going to be over a period of time. You pick. You're in the driver's seat. And importantly, with these advanced reactors, there's a variety of outputs. The traditional reactors generated electricity. These more modern reactors, they can generate electricity, they can generate process heat, and they can directly produce hydrogen through high temperature electrolysis. There's a lot of discussion in the last few years about developing hydrogen as a synthetic fuel. And that's something we need to continue working on. The most efficient production of hydrogen uses very high temperature electrolysis. There are certain classes of advanced reactors that operate at very high temperatures, such as the high temperature gas reactor, that can be used to directly produce process heat and hydrogen to support other processes, such as the production of green steel and similar. And there's a multitude of uses, and they're shown on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. So what's the timeline to deliver the product? So this is an image generated by my colleagues at the Idaho National Lab, and it's kind of busy, but it maps out a plan from 2026 to 2030. So these advanced technologies will go critical somewhere in the 2029, 2030 timeframe. So do they exist today? No. Are they just a couple of years out? Yes. These reactor technologies, some of them will be test driven at the Idaho National Lab, and they're planned again to go critical principally over the period from 2028 to 2030. So these advanced technologies will be essentially proven and operating by 2030. Then after that, you have commercialization. Next slide, please. So what do they look like? Well, I've got a couple of images here, and this is not, obviously not all of the reactor technologies, just some of them. So as examples, the image top left here is an artist's rendering of the planned Natrium build in Wyoming. And this is a project involving TerraPower, which is a Bill Gates funded startup, GE Hitachi, and so this is generating 300 megawatts of electricity. The power island is here contained within this fence arrangement. They use thermal storage as a buffer and to enable dispatchable energy to the grid. So this is one type of reactor. Over here on the right, we have an image from X-Energy, another artist's rendering. This particular build will be 4 high-temperature gas reactors, providing process heat to the Dow facility at Cedric, Texas, also able to push excess electricity back into the grid. So this is a dual function reactor. Again, this is high-temperature gas, this is liquid metal. Bottom left, one of my, let me say this is aspiration. So, in work with some colleagues at Lucid Catalyst, we were developing ideas that have been embraced now by some others, where we put a nuclear power plant in the back end of a container. And you might say, well, that's innovative, but we have them in the back of aircraft carriers, and we have them in the back of submarines, and we've done that for 50 or 60 years. So this is not a new idea. But maritime shipping is one of the dirtiest, most polluting enterprises around. So like, if you want to clean up maritime shipping, this is one good way to go. But what's shown here is a container vessel powered by a nuclear power plant generating synthetic hydrogen and synthetic ammonia, synthetic fuels. My hope is one of these days, perhaps before I expire, we'll have a fleet of these stacked up right in the middle of Lake Ontario. You've got an ultimate heat sink, you're generating clean synthetic fuels, and we have a mothership here, and we have bunker ships that take this synthetic fuel and deliver it to points up and down the eastern seaboard. So people have talked about synthetic fuels, but they haven't talked about how we're going to produce them. This is one model to produce them, and Lake Ontario is large. And this is a highly scalable approach. So something for us to think about. These are micro-reactors, in the middle at the bottom, or what I affectionately call reactors in a box. This is technology that has received a significant shot on the arm from the US Department of Defense, where they want to deploy nuclear reactors on 24 hours notice to send into theaters of war to support forward operating bases. But the reactor has to fit inside a Connex box, and the Connex box has to fit inside a Hercules transport. It has to weigh less than 40 tons, and again, the goal is to deploy them on less than 24 hours notice. But when we talk about micro-reactors, that's about the size. Think of Connex box. And last but not least, image bottom right is what we've called a hydrogen gigafactory. Again, to produce synthetic fuels onshore. We use, in this case, high temperature gas reactors. We have an energy field of sorts shown in the blue and the green, producing process heat to drive the hydrogen. So it's just thinking about the technology differently, and that's enabled by the fact that we have these new technologies. Next, please. So I have the one slide on possible repowering of Dunkirk. So the question I was asked is possible? And the answer is yes, it's possible. So my sole example here is, image on the left is from Google Earth. We just took a snapshot of the site of the coal plant. And it occupies, depending upon what you count, around 65 to 70 acres. That's nugget number one. If you choose to repower on the site. a project that's underway in Michigan from Holtec, who are repowering the Palisades, or restarting the Palisades reactor, is to build their small modular reactor. It uses a fuel technology that is no different from that in the large light water reactors. But this dual unit SMR 300 generating about 640 megawatts of electricity, which is about the capacity of the coal plant at Dunkirk. The required area described here is about 60 acres. You could compact it a little bit, but long story short, you could build the Palisades, or you could take the Palisades build of 640 megawatts and with some rejigging of the space, deploy it at Dunkirk, if you want to. But it's possible. Next, please. So, building reactors is great. But unless you put fuel inside that reactor, you're not going to generate any electricity. So the fuel's important, the reactor's important, the transmission's important, and the distribution's important. So I think it's important that you understand what are the available fuels. So listed here we have known by the acronym LEU, that's low enriched uranium. HALEU is high assay low enriched uranium, and HEU is highly enriched uranium. So HEU is used by the Navy for the reactors for the aircraft carriers and submarines. And it's also used for some research reactors in certain parts of the country. But it is not used in the commercial operating fleet and won't be used in the commercial operating fleet. LEU is the traditional fuel that was described a little earlier in the form of those fuel pellets, and the level of enrichment of the uranium-235 is somewhere between 3 and 5%. HALEU lands in the middle, but just below in terms of level of enrichment, that which is associated with proliferation. So there are some international rules written around how, to what degree can you enrich uranium. There's been a lot of chatter in the press about what's happening in a certain part of the Middle East about enriching uranium. That discussion is, I understand it, about 60%. And that's much, much closer to the high enriched uranium than either LEU or HALEU. But the question then is availability. So as you might choose to think about reactor technologies, a lot of the reactors or the advanced reactors are going to use HALEU in the form of these triso pebbles shown bottom right. This is the pebble bed type of reactor. The issue with HALEU and triso is that it's not available. And we're not going to see it come online in significant amounts until the early 2030s. President Biden gave it a shot in the arm by investing what will turn out to be billions of dollars in standing up HALEU and triso. I suspect we need more investment in that area. The reactors in the operating fleet and the Holtec SMR and the GE Hitachi SMR, they use traditional fuel. So again, if you want to build one of these reactors and get it operating in 2030, you need to think about what type of fuel is available. Just be aware that the fuel differs. Now, what's the fuel look like? So shown here with the acronym WEC below it, this is Westinghouse Electric Company. This is a very traditional fuel assembly or fuel bundle for a pressurized water reactor. And you saw this in a previous image being lowered into the reactor vessel. But that's what it looks like. This package is about this big by this big, much taller than me. For the TerraPower reactor that I introduced a little earlier, that uses HALEU, but in terms of metallicized fuel rods. So a little different from the triso application we see bottom left. But as you have discussions, potentially have discussions with reactor developers, don't let fuel fall off the radar screen. It's critical. Availability of fuel is critical. Next, please. So this is my last slide before I turn it over to Dennis. Why build nuclear? Well, I put it to you, the power is highly reliable. The capacity factors for nuclear are above 95%. That's really important if you're thinking about delivering baseload. If you're delivering energy to data centers and similar, they want power at 99.9999% reliability. And getting those last two nines of the four nines is incredibly expensive. It increases the cost of the power as you go from two nines to four nines by about a factor of 10. Because you pay for the reliability. If we build nuclear, we're going to spend dollars in our state. I see no downside to that. I think there's a real upside. So everyone talks about the cost. I look at that as an investment in the future of our kids and our grandkids. For the construction, these are well-paid union jobs. So I expect we'd see broad support from trade unions as we look to build nuclear. And then when we build these plants, they're going to run for conservatively 40 years, but we're now designing plants that will run 80 years and 100 years. So once you build the plant, it will operate for a long period of time. Now, there will be upgrades, there's electronics changes and the like, but the basic building won't change. It'll be there for a long period of time. So in terms of dollars, and again, I pitched this to members of the trade unions that came to our talk last week. If I build a gigawatt scale reactor, one, there's 715 full-time workers at that facility, jobs. You look at the median salaries, and these were taken from data in 2021. These numbers have bumped up substantially in the last couple of years. So we're seeing median salaries of the order of $50 to $60 an hour in 2025 dollars. And something that is really important to me, we have a really big fraction of the workforce of women. So that's an important part of the discussion. Because, and this is data, again, from a number of years ago. I suspect that fraction has bumped up a little bit. So I think there are a whole lot of good reasons to build nuclear. It needs to be part of the discussion. Again, at the end of the day, you folks decide, but it needs to be part of the discussion. Next, please. And that's done for me. Dennis, all yours.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, here's what I want to make sure, so nuclear is 10, 15 years, right? Think about it. So getting involved in it early, understanding it is really critical to start now. NYPA or NYSERDA will be sending out an RFI or an RFP probably within the month. And so you want to be able to look at that and say, is that of interest to us? Because what you want to do is be in the pipeline if nuclear is in your future and you have interest in it. So that's key. But I've served on the Chautauqua Energy Committee, and I always thank Pierre for he's always involved. I always like to hear the update, and it's run by Ken Law. And I spent 3 years on the Climate Action Council, by the way, and I also voted against it. 3 years of my time, 3 years of my work, and I voted against it because I was concerned with the implementation strategy. And the interesting part about that, and it's really important, is I use direct feedback from the committee and also from what Mark Ice is running in terms of the community input group on the reuse committee in Dunkirk. Because why? Because you're the market. And guess who listens to the market? No one. And I'm concerned. And so I just want to put nuclear in perspective. You want to be interested, if you're interested, you want to take part in the RFP, I'm all in. I get it. I want to do that. But does that mean that everything is kosher today? Everything is working as a well-oiled machine? I'm sorry, it isn't. And that's what I want us to kind of like continue to work towards. Because economic development, when we look at what's happening in New York, we actually prioritize climate change over economic development, by the way, way over. And so what you have is economic development opportunities, and it's not just AI and data centers. I know we like to say AI and data centers, but I represent AI, data centers, semiconductors, and large advanced manufacturing. I have people coming to me and not going sometimes to the Economic Development Agency simply because of my background. Because their first question they always ask is there capacity available? And if there's not a yes, they're not even talking to anybody anymore. If there's a yes, then hey, I'm gonna introduce you to Nate, I'm gonna introduce you to Mar, I'll introduce you to anybody that can answer those type of questions. I'll get my buddy Vince, I'll do anything to get the right people involved. But if I can't get past, we have capacity, there's no conversation. I can tell you that I have been personally working with individuals that have looked at New York and left New York within an hour to 2 hours time and wanted to be in New York. That's what upsets me. They want to be in New York. And so when we talk about AI, data centers, think about it, these are high demand, high use businesses, industry, that need power 24/7 as perfect as we can get it. That means it can't be intermittent, by the way, and that's why it's important that Andrew went over what is base supply versus, peaking, right? Because renewables, and I'm not against renewable. People think I am, but I'm really not. I think every supply source has its application, and if you're trying to attract these type of industries to New York, you want them. And I think that if you make a statement that why are we wasting energy on AI data centers? I am telling you, you're missing the point, and you're not doing it purposely. Those type of customers contribute greatly to the fixed cost of how to operate the energy systems in New York. The amount of money that they contribute to infrastructure upgrades far outweighs any other industry, residential, customer, or commercial building. So the more of these folks that I get, the lower your unit cost of energy will evolve, right? Because you have more people contributing to the fixed cost. And I include the climate change program as a fixed cost, right? And so they contribute to that. So it's really important to kind of like level set, focus on, I can't get an industry here today. If I look and bring somebody into the table there and it's greater than 10,000 kW, they have to go through the New York Independent System Operator. That's a 2 to 3 year period of time. Let me just say, you're a site selector. If I tell you, oh, you're interested in coming to New York, I'll get you an answer in 3 years. What do you think they're saying to you? What, are you nuts? And then when you then go to the utility, and the utility will say, well, it takes, our construction schedule is out 4 years. 3 plus 4 is 7. Who's waiting for New York? Sorry. We have such an opportunity if we focus on this, right? If we focus on, let's get people, because I'm not against renewable energy. So if I rebuild my transmission system, and I think about it and say, I'm gonna build my transmission system because I got a lot of economic opportunity. Any renewable energy system, wind, solar, battery, I don't care what it is, let's follow economic development. Economic development does not follow renewable energy. It doesn't work that way. So here's just an example. It's a project I'm working on in Niagara Falls. This is private dollars. They're building their own substation. They're building their own interconnection to the utility system. So what is the utility actually doing for them that they're not doing for themselves, right? They're the ones footing the bill, in other words. So everything that they now pay for, demand charge, customer charge to the utility, it's actually to go to contribution of the fixed costs of electric infrastructure across the entire state, right? And that's to the tune of $6 million a year, forever, or for as long as they're in business. Also, look at the contribution to, if they're not exempt in taxes, they pay $5 million a year in taxes, and the annual climate subsidy is $8 million a year. That $8 million a year essentially goes to the New York State, NYSERDA, which is the Research Development Authority. What if I told the Chautauqua County, what would you do with $8 million a year for 20 years versus sending it to someone that you then have to apply to get some of it back? So this is an economic development. This is business. This is just money to me. You know, I have a passion towards understanding how to balance supply, demand, and delivery. Because if we don't balance it, there's always a cost. And so what's that cost? Well, another client of mine pays 60% of their utility delivery charge is now the system benefit charge. And what kind of really opportunity does a large manufacturer get from NYSERDA? And I'm not against NYSERDA, please don't take it that way. I just think we gotta think of different models. And the models have to be market-driven models, not policy-driven models. Because what do you think most of the organizations are focused on? They're focused on the goals of climate that. That's 70% renewable energy by 2030, which quite frankly we'll never achieve. We wouldn't have achieved that even when we started in 2019. And that was when I sat on the Climate Action Council, I said that. And yet we continue down the path. The problem with doing things that you know you can't achieve is that you increase the cost to achieve. And I know when I'm saying things that are probably so basic, but you know, I'm a crazy engineer. I'm not an attorney, by the way. I work for Phelps Lytle. But I also have an MBA, so I actually, you know, I want to see a struggle between an engineer and an MBA. Just watch me at night, drive myself crazy. Because the engineer can figure this out. It's just how do we actually pencil it out? And that's what people that are in the advanced manufacturing, that's what they're looking for. So then we say, well, something like nuclear, let's say that's what, who's paying for that? That's what I hear, right? So what is the traditional way that things like that will get paid for? Well, ratepayers, got them. We can regulate that. Why don't we think about gathering a group of those semiconductors, AI data centers, advanced manufacturing, enter into some sort of an MOU where they actually contribute to, because they need it. They need capacity and price certainty. It's a different model than what we have today, and that's all I'm trying to propose to you as a legislative body. We've got to relook at this. This regulatory model has been with us for 90 years, maybe. Isn't it time we kind of like say, hey, is there a way to do it a little different? So what I'm trying to show is attracting these is just good business. You attract these type of entities, it is good business. It's not just jobs. It's actually contribution to the overall fixed cost. And guess what that does? It drives down the unit cost for every ratepayer. You think that's happening today?
No.
Yeah, it's kind of, we're headed here. So climate to me is, and again, I'm okay with that. But look at those two pictures there, the wind farm and the solar farm. Pretty, right? What don't you see? Do you see a city in that picture? Do you see a manufacturing plant in that picture? So what's happening is when we set climate change as a priority, what most developers are looking for is land. They're not looking for where's the transmission line. They're not looking for where the city is. They're looking for land. And so when they find the land, what does the utility and the regulator then have to do? Well, then they have to focus their transmission and distribution planning on on where the supply is, which doesn't help Mark. It doesn't help your economic development at all, right? Because it's not base load. It's actually the intermittent source. I don't care how much battery you put on that thing. It'll never be base load. We gotta think about how do we rethink the model so that it's not just looking at it from the point of view of climate change, but how do we create revenue by focus on economic development and then aligning these type of programs to economic development? So what's happening is that all these projects, there's probably 4,000 renewable energy projects in the ISOQ. Are you aware of that? That's like walking around the world with a sledgehammer over your head. But sooner or later, they're gonna hit the bill. Because when they energize is when the utility then pays. Oh, the utility pays, or perhaps the ratepayer pays. So that's what's happening, and we're actually going down this path. But I would say, raise the priority of being economic development. So if we're having to redo that transmission line, put the priority on the transmission upgrade for the economic development project, the large AI, data center, semiconductor, advanced manufacturing, and then allow the solar or the wind or the battery project align with that transmission corridor. This way you're creating revenue that's paying for your climate programs and not creating what I would consider a cost death spiral. Because the more we keep adding on to those. So transmission is really the key in a lot of this because we don't have any. Have you seen that Buffalo, what it comes up with the term, what do they call it, Mark? Tech corridor, right? We're gonna be a tech corridor from Buffalo to Rochester to Syracuse. You can't be a tech corridor of anything without transmission lines. And there is no transmission capacity to be a tech corridor. If you want to be a tech corridor, which I'm okay with, put your focus on rebuilding your transmission line to create a tech corridor, and then align your climate programs with the tech corridor, not the other way around. Because if we keep on adding costs, you're going to start losing interest. And that's not what any of us want. It's a microeconomic example. It's a microeconomic challenge for us, and I really believe we can do this. You cannot wait 3 years to do a study to respond to markets that come and go. I mean, what's the cycle of a market demand? It could be days, months, maybe a year. I can't even respond to one inquiry until 3 years from now. So you're not even a player. I do work in Alabama, North Carolina, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. I have none of these issues, by the way. None of them. So somebody will say to me, well, Dennis, should we look at natural gas? When we say that we're using our power available and we're losing the amount of capacity we have in generation, I say we're doing it to ourselves purposely because we're the ones shutting down the generation facilities in New York. We're purposely doing that. As opposed to thinking, well, wait a minute, I have till 2040 to be zero emission. Why don't I create my strategy towards 2040? And that's the way I think it would reset how we would look at this, And again, I say these things because I think you guys have a critical piece. And from a personal point of view, you have been one of the most interested counties I've ever dealt with. And that's both challenging and exciting, so I just want to know that. All right, now here's the one, I love this slide. Do you know what this is? This is the city of Buffalo. Those squiggly lines there, the red, the yellow, the green, those are the distribution systems in the city of Buffalo. So what happens is that because we're going to be climate friendly, we're going to transition from a fossil economy to an electric economy. Meaning everybody's going to be all electric. Those red lines are the feeders that are already at peak capacity. The yellow lines are the ones that are near peak capacity, and the green is that we have some room. When we decarbonize our economy, the consultant that actually was consulting for the Climate Action Council said that electric demand would increase 50%. You will not have any yellow, they'll be all red, and the red will either be burned down or replaced. Regardless, this will be a burden to the ratepayer, because we're not thinking about this. So there's other technologies, and I always talk about it. I love the idea of nuclear. It's in the future. It's something that we ought to be playing with, we take a part of it, and we're comfortable with it. But how do I respond to a manufacturer that comes to me today? And there's technology out there, one of which is fuel cells. I don't want to get into the technology, but it's very limited in terms of its emissions, very low emissions. In fact, it's so low that you don't have to file Title V permit for it. That's how low. But I can get 100 megawatts of fuel cell by the end of next year. So that's how I'm actually working on a project in Broome County, and we're going fuel cells. That can be done behind the meter, meaning I don't have to go through the utility, except for the natural gas, or the ISO. That's being responsive to the market, is my point. And we have to choose, do we want to be responsive? Because if I have a bridge technology, I'm actually willing to sign an MOU to say, I'll shut down my fuel cell, because you're telling me, state and feds, you'll have nuclear in 2040. I'll shut down the fuel cell in 2040. That puts the burden on the state and not on the market. Does it make sense? I mean, it's now I'm trying to go. I don't usually make sense, but in this case, I really try. So I say this, and I know that it's a little distraction from, we wanted to give you a good feel for nuclear. I just don't want us to lose sight of the real challenge, the real, the inability to respond to markets today. Because I gotta be honest with you, if I don't solve capacity issues today, I won't worry about nuclear tomorrow. Because I won't have enough load to actually justify it. And that concerns me as a New Yorker. And I do, again, want to extend my appreciation to Mark and his whole team for allowing me to talk like a lunatic on his committee. And for Pierre, who with Ken Lawton, I really enjoy working with the Chicago folks, and I do appreciate it. This is personal to me, to be honest with you, if that hasn't come through yet.
Sure.
It's also professional, because I don't have a moment's of sleep because of the amount of people that are interested in coming to New York. And every time I reject one, it takes a little piece of me away from what we're trying to all do here. So I've always said I'm here for the market. I speak from the market, but I can give examples at any point in time. So I, from my bottom of my heart, appreciate you indulging me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask you a quick question? So what would re-energizing at the Dunkirk plant do for you in your ability to bring business to New York?
So what it would do is, it would set in motion. Let's say that we say, okay, we're gonna repower it. It's 10 years away. It's selected. Let's say it's selected. I don't know if it'll be selected, but it's selected. I would go to people like Mark's team, and I would say, get a bunch of high demand, high load factor potential clients. We'll enter into a long-term power purchase agreement. We'll guarantee you the capacity that we're building at that location at a certain price. What they get is the capacity and price certainty. What we get, or the state of New York gets, is a contribution to building out that nuclear facility.
Then they move here instead of Alabama.
Yes. Because why? Because Andrew mentioned the 3 Mile Island. You know who now is opening that up?
Yes.
Microsoft. They're not going to the utility. They're saying, look, I need capacity. So I'm willing to jump in. And I think you're gonna find that these larger customers are willing to work with communities and say, hey, how do we do this together? Because you can't place this burden on ratepayers anymore. It's gotta stop, because there's different models. So it'll all depend on how long it would take to do it. And it really has to be something that is of interest of the city and the county. I think Andrew was ensured that he said that as well. Because, but we got, if we do an application, it has to include workforce development. You know, when we're doing climate change, you know where most of the work in climate change occurs? In your cities. It's where the electric demand is. So how many businesses have we created? How much workforce have we generated to do climate change work? So where do you think those workers are coming from? Out of state. Because we give subsidies. I just think it's a different model I'm just trying to propose, you know, to look out after your constituent base, because we're focused on goals. I'm an engineer. I focus on what problems, what opportunities, you know. I'll get your goals. I want to fix something first, then you get your goals. Yes, sir.
Just a historical note, the state of New York offered NRG $200 million to convert Dunkirk to natural
I
gas.
was part of that, when I was working.
And
with
NRG
National
said,
Grid. No, it wasn't NRG, it was actually the lawsuits that were brought out by a number of environmental groups that kept us in, National Grid, we worked on an agreement with National Fuel to allow them to upgrade their, natural gas line using our right of National Grid's right of way, not highway.
And they did.
And they did. And they were ready to go.
Yes, they are.
And then all of the lawsuits came in, NRG started to see everything
What,
getting
excuse me,
paid.
what groups brought those lawsuits?
They're out of Louisiana, weren't they?
Yeah.
One group?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of
Yeah,
Louisiana.
so they're just transition type groups, right?
Yeah, we know
Nobody
what
that
those are.
lived here,
Right, right.
So
right.
it was more like national groups, you know, that are well-funded by them.
Oh.
Well-funded and well-organized.
all I'm trying to point out
Well, it's political.
is that with all the critique of New York State, in this instance, New York State offered $200 million cash to NRG to convert coal to natural gas.
Do you know where that 200 million was coming from, by the way?
I have no idea, but it
I'll tell you,
got
National-
diverted.
National Grid ratepayers. We had to sign up for, yeah, I'm trying to speak on it kind of.
No,
I
you're
was
not.
part of
We
that.
need to know this.
So that was National Grid that was brought to the table by then Governor Cuomo, and we had to agree to come up with $20 million for 10 years.
And when that didn't work, the state spent $200 million to build a pharmaceutical plant in the town of Dunkirk, I believe.
Well, when that didn't work from the utility point of view, we put in capacitor banks because we needed to make sure that we need to stabilize the electric system. The electric system is becoming more and more destabilized.
The question flowing
Look at
from,
it practical,
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
this is practical, this is not.
No, that is practical.
theory.
how did Western New York accommodate the loss of 500 megawatts coal-fired from Dunkirk? Somehow, the lights stayed on.
Yeah, but, the transmission line had to be redesigned, at our expense to make sure that we can move power from Canada into New York or from Pennsylvania into New York. That's not helping New York, by the way. Canada loves us, so does Pennsylvania. I like us to love us. We can do this. There's a way to do this. And I think when we get trapped with these ideology type things, and I get their passion, I stand on this planet too, I wanna say that there's a way to do it to balance economic and environmental sustainability. You can do both, but you gotta do it purposely, you can't do it because you have a win to do it, so. Yes, sir.
Just from a legal and a political point of view, the jurisdiction of this county legislature is very limited. And what I see on the nuclear issue is something that I faced as a county legislator about 35 years ago. The state of New York at that time was publicly offering to build some new prisons around the state. They wisely said politically, we're not building it anywhere where we're not asked to come in. So I had to vote as a county legislator long ago and far away. Did I want us to invite the Brockton Correction Facility I voted yes after thinking it through thoroughly. It's not often this county gets the promise of 350 new jobs with state pension and health insurance and so forth. So I see this similar with any micro nuclear, small nuclear, 200 megawatts or whatever, couple of them equaling roughly what Dunkirk was. Our role is going to be, do we say to the state of New York, NYSERDA, FERC, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, do we say we are open to your potentially locating a nuclear facility in our county? That's it. I mean, we're not going to tell Albany or FERC or anybody else how to build transmission lines or where to build transmission lines.
I would think that you would make a recommendation, however, to consider the impact on economic development on your constituent base. And that you should require the Public Service Commission to start prioritizing your ratepayer over some of the projects that were currently underway. That I think is under your control, just to say that, right? Or you get the committee to say it. You know, believe me, I'm the right person to say it. Because I can sit in front of legislators and go through every bit of their laws and where they went awry, and not purposely. This is a complex subject. I try to boil it down to, I think it's actually simple.
You've made it simple.
Yes.
Focus on growth. Focus your priority, because that creates revenue. And that's it. So, again, I probably went way over, and I
Oh, you're
really
fine,
truly
Dennis. Thank you.
apologize,
Thank you
but
very much.
I really appreciate everybody's attention. So, and
Okay.
Andrew, I didn't know if you need any questions, Sarandon, Beer, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you. I was going to say one thing on the, I think the county's welcome to distribute a PDF of the slide deck. Contact information is on slide number 1. You have the link for homework if you want to watch it at some later time, but folks are welcome to reach out. Telephone,
No,
email,
and I'm an economics major, so I'm sitting here just like.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.